folks, welcome back to TheyMightBeRacing. I figured since I had all my toolkit out this weekend, I'd spend a few minutes talking to you about sandblasting. It's one of those things that eventually, at some point in time, you will want to do some sandblasting. You'll get tired of sanding, or you're going to run into things that have very complex surfaces, and you want to be able to sandblast them appropriately so you can get all of the stuff off. Now, for most of us home users, sandblasting equipment is pretty minimal. You're not going to see the type of large, heavy-scale stuff that a commercial unit or a commercial place would have. And 9 times out of 10, we really don't need anything of that scale. You think about it, the 2 really big blasting jobs that you do with any given car are the chassis and the frame, providing it has both the chassis and the frame. Now, for all intents and purposes, for any one of us, that's too big of a scale for us to be doing at home. I can tell you that I have sandblasted a frame at home, and I'll actually show you the gun I used when I did it for the first time. And it was probably one of the most arduous, long experiences of my life. It was definitely worth the $500 to actually have somebody come in and finish the job for me. But when you get into sandblasting, there's really 2 types. There's abrasive blasting, there's a pressurized blasting, and then there's siphon blasting. Most of us start with siphon blasting. The reason for that is that it's just cheap. You can get started very easily, and it doesn't take a lot. In fact, the first kit that I ever bought for sandblasting, for siphon blasting, was this fundamental little tiny kit. And it's just a little 30-pounder, comes with a gun, hose hooks in. First thing I found of use with this particular kit was to pitch this. I don't know about you, but I don't spend a lot of time walking around when I'm sandblasting. Normally it's focusing in on some small little part. So what I ended up doing was just simply pulling the gun unit off, and then I used a 10-gallon bucket to fill all my media with. Now, what used to happen to me, though, is I used to do it outside, out in the backyard. And after about 20 minutes of doing this, is that you've shot all your sand all over the entire yard. You now have nowhere to get more sand. You have to go out, buy more, sift it. And since you're not supposed to use silica sand, blasting material is expensive. For those of you who don't know, silica-based sands, when they get dust in the air, you inhale it, it goes into your lungs, you get a disease called silicosis, you die. So, at any level, always make sure you've got some form of breathing gear, breathing apparatus on while you're sandblasting. Either a full-blown respirator or at an absolute minimum, a dust mask. But for all intents and purposes, a respirator is the appropriate route to go. So, eventually it turns out, after using my little siphon blaster for far too long, that I needed some more or better equipment. So, the type of work that I do splits between 2 things. Doing fine interior pieces that I just need to clean up and paint, they're not necessarily rusty, and then doing larger structural pieces that are part of the underlying suspension of the car. So in terms of doing the interior fine pieces, for example, the heater box assembly article that I just wrote, or I'm in the process of writing, depending on when you've seen this, I have a media cabinet. And all the media cabinet is the same setup. It's a siphon-based gun. The difference being you've got it in a sealed unit. Air comes in through the back, you feed it in through the back, all your media sits in the bottom of the basket, and you simply reshoot the same media over and over again at the piece you're using. Now, some of the good things about these are you get these plastic film inserts that you can lay underneath so that you don't end up etching your glass. Sometimes they stick, sometimes they don't. The easiest way to actually set them down correctly is to unscrew this stinker, take the glass off, clean it, put it on, and then proceed onward. But that's a bit of work. So the other things that are important on this is there's generally a vent on the side and a vent in the back. If you don't have any type of drainage, in other words, a dust collector or a shop vac or something like that that you can hook in, you need to cover it with some form of material like floss that will allow you to filter the air coming out of the box and not shoot dust all over your garage. Realistically, there's a kit you can buy or you can fabricate your own where you can hook your shop vac up right on the side of this unit, and then it'll pull all the dust out of the air, and you just need to end up cleaning out your shop vac when you're done. The important things to look for when you're going to buy one of these is, overall quality of the sheet metal, obvious, Most of this stuff is made in China these days, so the metal you're going to get is the metal you're going to get. Take a look at your hinge quality. The first one of these I bought, the hinge disintegrated at the store. Interior, the seals, capacity, and pitch of the underside area. Some of the upgrades for these that are possible, which I wish I had, I have to install into this particular box, is an interior light. Having that light come in from the inside versus an outside reflecting off the glass, you get a lot less glare that way. The other thing, which is one of my own stupid tricks, is before you use these long gloves and you reach in, put on a pair of plastic gloves underneath. Just the simple nitrile gloves that you should have out in your shop. And the reason why is that when you put your hands in rubber gloves, you get rubber glove soup. Do you want your rubber glove soup in here, or do you want your rubber glove soup here that you can dispose of when you're done? For me, I'd rather dispose of one of these than having to throw these out every 6 months. And they get pretty rank pretty fast if you don't take care of them. Now, the one other type of sandblasting I do is all about high pressure. And so, I have here a pressurized abrasive blaster. And the way that this particular unit works, let me see if I can find a way to get it up a little higher, is unlike the siphon feed, which blows air across and suctions the air up, the pressurized blaster uses a feed from your air compressor, pressurizes the cylinder where the media sits, and then you get a high pressure line coming out that immediately blasts both sand and air. Now, in terms of really nasty, rough, scale, heavy, greased, all sorts of crap, this is the most effective route. However, you can only blast as long as the tank lasts, and you need a pretty beefy air compressor to run one of these. So, for example, down on the ground behind me, I have what is my primary shop vac because, well, I'm too busy buying cars and don't have enough time to buy compressors. So, when I rebuild this particular garage, it's going to get a significantly larger compressor. But today, I've got a fairly standard unit that you would pick up just about anywhere. We're talking around a 30 to 20 gallon tank, 5 CFM, not much to it. It's overkill for just about anything you'd want to do at home, but it's just powerful enough to not do anything automotive well. So, for simple siphon sandblasting, it works just fine as long as I take my time. If you're serious about doing any sandblasting and you're talking about doing anything more than a couple of pieces here and there, you're going to want to make sure to invest in the best quality air compressor you can buy. Remember, it's not always the volume of the tank that's on the air compressor. It's the CFM rate that becomes the most important factor. And that rate varies depending on the pressure your system runs at. So I was looking at one the other day that does 20 CFM at 100 PSI. Well, my small unit down there is 5 CFM at 90, and that's if I'm lucky. So you can see how much of a difference in terms of airflow that makes. In some upcoming stuff, I'm actually going to be building an in-garage sandblasting paint booth. The goal of that to be build a booth that's large enough to literally push a car or a frame into it, take care of it, and then take it down when you're not using it. So hopefully by the time we get to that, I'll have the bigger compressor and I'll show you how to fab your own.